Greetings to my dear guests on this video. I wish you a pleasant viewing and look forward to your feedback in the comments. There was a time when I thought hard work guaranteed respect. Not admiration, not applause, just quiet, steady respect. The kind that meant you didn't have to defend yourself in meetings or constantly remind people of what you'd done. But at Dalton Technologies, the more I did, the more invisible I became. For years, I was the fallback. When projects failed, I fixed them. When others stumbled, I stepped in. Late-night reports, impossible deadlines, weekend presentations, my calendar swallowed them all without complaint. I was the one who never said no. And so I became the one they always asked. My name never made it into the company-wide emails. My contributions were always team efforts. But when emergencies broke out, everyone knew whose door to knock on. Mine. I didn't complain. I believed it was temporary. I told myself, this is how you prove your value. That one day, someone upstairs would notice and say, "Holly, it's your time." That day never came. What did come were headaches, missed birthdays, a hollow feeling that grew heavier with each postponed weekend. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who looked 10 years older than she was, held together by caffeine and silence. Until last month. It was a Monday morning when I sat down, opened my laptop, and stared at the screen for a full 5 minutes. Not reading, not typing, just breathing. Something in me shifted. I didn't feel pride anymore. I felt worn. That evening, I walked into HR and filled out the online form for leave. A full week, no laptop, no quick calls, no emergencies. It would be my first vacation in 6 years. When my assistant blocked the dates in my calendar, I heard her whisper to someone in the hallway, "She's really doing it." And when I informed my direct supervisor, a quiet, sharp-jawed man named Clive, who rarely showed emotion, he gave me a thin smile and replied, "We'll try to manage." Behind his words was something else. Displeasure, maybe. Disbelief. The next day, 2 directors emailed me urgent items to wrap up before I left. Another asked me to reschedule my flight, just in case something comes up on Friday. I declined, politely, but firmly, for the first time. On my last day in the office, people came to me like it was my retirement. "You're really going? What if something happens? Could you just review this before you log off?" I handled what I could and left the rest behind. I owed them nothing more. As I packed my things and walked out of the office, I caught Gordon Trevitt, our new vice president, watching me from across the hall. His expression unreadable. He didn't say a word, but something told me he wasn't pleased. The first morning of my vacation, I woke up without an alarm. The window of my London hotel framed a dull gray sky, and the usual clatter of early emails and calendar alerts was replaced by silence. I stayed in bed longer than I should have. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to just be. I had planned the trip carefully. A week in a quiet part of Chelsea, far from the noise of central offices and boardroom buzz. No briefings, no fires to put out. My phone was off. My out-of-office reply was on. I had even left my work laptop in my bedroom closet back home. By midday, I strolled along the Thames, coffee in hand, letting the breeze carry off years of stress like dust shaken from a rug. I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. But it didn't last. That evening, when I turned my personal phone on to check in with a friend I was planning to meet, I saw the first message. "Clive, work. Quick question. Do you remember the updated figures for the quarterlies? Can't seem to find your version." 5 minutes later, Marta, accounts. "Client meeting moved up. Can you forward your talking points? They asked for you specifically." Then an email, marked urgent, from Gordon's assistant. Subject: Revised meeting schedule next week. The message contained a full list of internal and external meetings scheduled for the week I was away. My name was still attached to most of them, including one with our executive board, something I'd been told would be postponed until I returned. I stared at the screen, rereading the email. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't an accident. It was too precise. Meetings had been moved into my vacation window, some urgently rescheduled, others newly created and marked required. They hadn't forgotten I was gone. They were doing it because I was gone. I called Clive out of courtesy. "Sorry to bother you," he said quickly, "but Gordon mentioned you might still be reachable for anything critical." I paused. "He said that?" "Just in passing. He said you'd probably want to stay in the loop." I hung up gently and sat by the window, the sun beginning to set behind tall buildings I didn't recognize. My jaw clenched. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but this wasn't a misunderstanding. It felt like something more deliberate, like I had broken an unwritten rule. People like me, dependable, silent workhorses, weren't supposed to rest. We were supposed to absorb and endure. The next morning, I received a call from Marta, sounding nervous. "Hi, I wouldn't normally call, but Gordon told the client you'd join the call at 10 a.m. He said you'd make it work from wherever you are." I didn't even know which client she meant. My heart began to pound, not from panic, but from something deeper, a sense of betrayal. For years, I had done everything right. And now, the moment I took a breath, they were pulling the floor out from under me. By day 3, my vacation had become a ghost town of missed plans and mounting pressure. The friend I was supposed to meet for lunch messaged me twice, then stopped. I had canceled without explaining, ashamed that even now, I couldn't walk away from the shadow of my job. I called the office. No one answered. Then I received another email from Gordon's assistant, this one more curt. "Gordon would like a quick status update from you by end of day, verbal or written." There was no question mark, no "if you have time," just an order, wrapped in a tone too polite to challenge and too sharp to ignore. I closed the message and stared at my reflection in the black screen of my phone. What were they doing? And more importantly, why now? On the 4th day of my trip, I took a train outside of London. I told no one where I was going, not friends, not coworkers. I turned off my phone, packed a notepad, and boarded a quiet morning express heading west. I needed distance, not just from the messages and expectations, but from the pressure closing in around me. There's a clarity that comes when you're alone, away from noise. I sat by the window and watched hills roll by, trying to breathe in the silence. But my mind kept returning to one thought. Why now? For months, I had sensed a shift. Clients I'd built relationships with started acting colder. Internal conversations moved behind closed doors. The board grew distant. And Gordon, he made sure I was kept just close enough to do the work, but far enough away to miss the bigger picture. In the last quarter, I'd been assigned to handle a series of negotiations with a long-standing partner whose pricing demands had become more aggressive. They wanted more services for less money, shorter delivery times, fewer penalties, and looser quality checks. Gordon, naturally, wanted to keep them. "Their legacy," he said in a meeting. "We can't afford to lose them right now." But I had pushed back. I had seen the warning signs, corners cut, complaints rising. I'd documented every concern, sent weekly reports no one responded to. I didn't just want to maintain old contracts. I wanted to evolve. Quietly, I'd begun studying a smaller, newer player in the market. They didn't have the scale of our current partners, but their growth was fast, clean, and promising. I hadn't mentioned this new firm to anyone yet, not even Clive. I was still learning what I could. Their name was Novenridge Logistics, a mid-sized disruptor out of northern Germany. I'd spoken to their founder once, informally. She had vision, grit, and, unlike the people above me, patience. I wasn't sure if anything could come of it, but it felt different. Honest. Back at the hotel that evening, I turned my phone back on. 18 notifications, 5 missed calls, 3 from Gordon's assistant, 2 from internal numbers I didn't recognize, dozens of emails. One marked, "Confidential immediate attention required." It was from Gordon. "We've reviewed your handling of the McKinnon discussions. Unacceptable delays, excessive scrutiny, and missed opportunities. We're preparing to make internal adjustments. Your presence will be required by Friday." My blood went cold. McKinnon. That was the account I'd refused to push through without updated quality terms. The one Gordon had clearly been eager to close, despite my repeated warnings. And now, without my presence, he had likely greenlit it, without question, without conflict. I sat still, phone in hand, for a long time. A hotel housekeeper knocked once, then left. I didn't answer. It was becoming clearer. Gordon wasn't just piling work on me during vacation. He was setting me up. Slowly, systematically. I opened my notes on Novenridge and began drafting an email, not as a Dalton representative, as myself. I asked if they'd be open to a formal conversation in the next week, off the record. My instincts told me I'd need a backup plan soon. The reply came in less than an hour. Yes, let's talk. I leaned back, heart pounding. Not out of fear, but because for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone else to give me permission. I didn't return to London right away. I stayed in a quiet village near the coast, not because I wanted more rest, but because I needed space to think. Everything at Dalton was spiraling, too fast to control, too deliberate to be coincidence. I knew Gordon was gunning for something. What I hadn't figured out yet was why it had to happen now. I didn't reply to his last email. I had nothing to defend. I had followed every protocol. Every delay had been documented, every red flag flagged. But silence was no protection. In a company like ours, silence just meant you weren't controlling the narrative. The storm broke 2 days later. I was sitting outside a bakery, nursing my second coffee of the morning, when I got the call. It wasn't from HR. It wasn't from Gordon. It was from Clive. He never called unless something was wrong. "Holly," he said, voice unusually flat. "It's about McKinnon." I froze. "They backed out," he continued. "Completely. Gordon's furious. He's saying you stalled the deal so long, they lost patience. That your overcautious behavior cost us everything." My heart sank. "Clive, you know that's not what happened. I know. I saw the reports. I backed you in the internal threads," he said quickly, then hesitated. "But I need you to know. Gordon's already made a statement. To the board. He's blaming you for the loss. He says the only way to restore confidence is to make leadership changes." I was silent. "You're not back until Monday, right?" "Correct." "He's not waiting that long." I lowered my head. "Clive, is he firing me?" There was a pause on the line, a long one. "He's announcing it in the morning." It felt like being punched in the chest. I had given that company everything, my nights, my holidays, my health, and in return, they were pushing me off a cliff while I was still out of office, still technically working under vacation status. I ended the call quietly and sat still. A local woman walking her dog passed by me twice. The coffee had gone cold in my hand. I didn't even notice. Then came the email. Subject: Termination of employment. Effective immediately. Due to your failure to secure the McKinnon renewal and the negative exposure this has generated within our partner ecosystem, Dalton Technologies has decided to terminate your contract with immediate effect. No call, no hearing, no conversation. At the bottom of the email, one final note, this time bolded in red. You are the biggest disgrace to our company. Gordon Trevitt, Vice President of Global Operations. It was deliberate, designed to humiliate, to erase everything I had ever done for them. I sat for a long time in the same chair. My thoughts didn't spiral. They slowed, hardened. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. The heartbreak was real, but it was buried under something else, resolve. Later that afternoon, I checked my messages from Novenridge. The CEO, Isolde, had sent a short, firm reply to my proposal. I like the direction you're thinking. If you're open to stepping outside your current role, we're open to a deeper conversation. Next week? I replied instantly, yes, name the time. Then, as the sun set over the street and locals bustled past me without noticing the earthquake in my world, I made one more decision. I wouldn't go home yet. I wouldn't return to Dalton. Not to beg, not to explain, not to correct their narrative. They had made theirs. It was time I made mine. The train ride back into London was colder than I remembered. It wasn't the weather. It was the knowledge that I was returning not as a valued employee, but as someone they had discarded like clutter. The office didn't know I was coming. Gordon certainly didn't. But I needed to step foot in that building, not for their approval, for myself. When I arrived, the lobby receptionist looked up with confusion. "Oh, Miss Taylor, I thought—" "You thought I was fired," I finished calmly. "Yes, But I still have my security clearance, don't I? She hesitated, then glanced at her screen. After a moment, she nodded. Still active. I didn't wait for her to make a call. I scanned my pass and walked through the turnstile like I had 100 times before. My heels clicked against the polished floor. I kept my chin high. The office looked the same. Desks, fluorescent lights, quiet tapping of keys. But there was a difference now. Eyes followed me as I passed. People who used to ask for help now looked away. I went straight to the 5th floor, the executive level. Gordon's assistant wasn't at her desk. Lucky me. I walked past and opened the door. He looked up from his desk with an expression that shifted too quickly to read. Part irritation, part surprise, part discomfort. "You're not supposed to be here," he said flatly. "Then call security." He didn't. I placed a folder on his desk. "These are the details of the potential partnership I've been exploring," I said. "A logistics firm with clean operations, exponential growth, and none of the legacy problems McKinnon carried." Gordon didn't touch the folder. "You've been fired." "Not by the CEO," I replied. "And not in a meeting, just an email. That doesn't scare me anymore." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "You're not an employee. You can't represent us." I wasn't representing Dalton, I said quietly. I was negotiating for myself. I wanted to see what options existed. I have them now. He narrowed his eyes. "Are you threatening me, Holly?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm just giving you a chance. If you take this to the CEO, it could change your 4th quarter, and maybe make your little scandal disappear." Gordon stood up, slowly. "I don't need your help." I smiled. "Then I'll take it somewhere else." I turned and walked out. That afternoon, I tried to reach out to the CEO directly. I left a message with his executive assistant and followed up with a formal request for a 15-minute meeting. No reply. 2 hours later, my system access was revoked. My Dalton email locked. My company login disabled. Clive texted me. "Clive, Gordon's scrambling. He told the board you stormed in and threatened legal action. They're siding with him for now." Me. "Of course they are. They think he's handling a rogue employee." Clive. "They don't know what you have, do they?" Me. "Not yet." I booked a room at a hotel near King's Cross and spent the evening polishing the Novenridge proposal. I updated it with details I hadn't shared before, ones I now realized could open new doors. This wasn't just about signing with them. It was about building something. The next day, I received a video call from Isolde Brenner, Novenridge's founder. She was composed, sharp as ever, and straight to the point. "You left the company," she said. Not a question. "They left me," I replied. "I just walked out the front door." She nodded. "So, are you here as an individual, or are you looking to build something new?" I paused. "I want both." She tilted her head. "Then come to Hamburg. Let's talk properly. But Holly, no middle ground. If you come with a vision. Not with baggage." I nodded. I have no interest in dragging baggage. Only blueprints. After the call ended, I sat still for a moment. I didn't need Dalton's board to believe me. I just needed them to watch what happened next. The flight to Hamburg was short, but my mind raced the entire time. I barely touched the coffee offered mid-air, too focused on the file sitting open on my tablet. Projections, merger models, partnership concepts. I wasn't just going to a meeting. I was stepping into something I hadn't allowed myself to imagine in years. Ownership. The car Novenridge sent met me at the airport, efficient and unbranded. Everything about their setup was clean, understated, and precise, so different from Dalton's sprawling bureaucracy. Their headquarters sat along the waterfront in an industrial building redesigned into glass and metal brilliance. It didn't scream power, it radiated quiet control. Isolde Brenner greeted me personally. She didn't do small talk. We walked straight into a conference room, and she gestured to a chair before sitting herself. "I've read everything," she said, tapping her fingers once on my proposal. "And spoken with a few quiet voices in your industry. You have respect, but no title, no position, no capital." I nodded. "Not yet." She studied me. "Why not start something of your own?" That question hung in the air. It wasn't flattery. It was challenge. I took a breath. Because I'm not looking for revenge. I'm looking to build something that outlasts people like Gordon Trevitt, and I can't do that alone, not yet. Her eyes didn't move. You want us to back you? I want us to grow something together. I bring contacts, relationships, market knowledge. You bring capital, infrastructure, and reach. Isolde was silent. Then, I like clarity. I also like leverage. So here's my offer. You join us under your own banner. Consultant status, renewable at 1 year. You lead our expansion into the UK and US markets. You pick your team. We give you support, but no comfort. We won't carry you. I'm not looking to be carried, I said. She smiled. Then let's talk terms. We negotiated for 2 hours. By the end, we had a deal in principle. I would operate under a new brand, a division built from scratch under Novenridge's umbrella but bearing my name. I would have autonomy, access, and a 1-year stake agreement with a profit share option. By evening, I sat alone in my hotel room overlooking the Elbe, still absorbing it. For the first time in my career, I wasn't someone's employee. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't waiting for validation. I sent Clive a short message. Me. I'm out, and I'm not coming back. His reply came quickly. Clive, he's trying to spin it like you were unstable. Said you threatened the office. But a few of us, we've been talking. Me? Talking? Clive. About the McKinnon contract. About how he shut you out. About the press leak that just dropped. That made me sit up. Me. What leak? Clive. Someone anonymously leaked McKinnon's new deal with Dalton. The terms are ugly, quality slashed, pricing barely profitable. It's spreading. I went online. Trade forums, LinkedIn chatter, even a niche logistics outlet had picked up the leak. Dalton's desperation, risky terms in new contract raise eyebrows. The article didn't mention Gordon by name, but insiders would know. And it got worse. Several anonymous comments pointed to internal resistance, then sudden terminations. One of their leads refused to sign off and got removed. Classic sweep under the rug move. Their BD manager was pushed out for doing her job. I leaned back in the chair and exhaled slowly. The story was beginning to tilt. Not because I had fought back with noise, but because I had walked away with dignity and facts. Now, Gordon was the one exposed, and I hadn't even started. I spent the next week in Hamburg not as a guest, but as a builder. The papers were signed. The name was chosen, Stonebridge Dynamics. I picked it deliberately. My grandfather had laid stone by hand for decades to support his family. Strength through quiet work. Stability in the face of storms. I wanted every email, every signature, every contract I sent from that moment forward to carry the weight of that name. Isolde gave me a temporary office on the top floor. No titles on the door, no fanfare, just space to breathe and move. Within 48 hours, I'd hired a legal advisor, a communications specialist, and a former analytics lead from a company that had once tried to poach me. I didn't need a full team yet. I needed sharp, lean minds who could operate with discretion. Then I did something I'd waited years to do. I wrote a short letter, 2 paragraphs, to Dalton's CEO. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't accusatory. I simply stated that I was starting a new firm, that Novenridge had backed my operation, and that several former Dalton clients had reached out to me, unsolicited, following the public exposure of the McKinnon contract. I closed with this line. For years, I tried to serve Dalton quietly and loyally. Now, I plan to serve the industry transparently and boldly. I didn't hear back, but Gordon did. I know this because 3 days later, Clive called me. He lost it. Who? I asked, but I already knew. Gordon. He stormed into the executive board meeting waving your letter. He demanded to know why no one warned him you were building elsewhere. He called it industrial espionage. I let out a quiet breath. Did anyone back him? Clive paused. Not as many as before. He told me that word had spread quickly about Stonebridge Dynamics. Not because I'd announced anything, but because people talk. Vendors, associates, and especially competitors. And when Novenridge's name was attached, people listened. Gordon had finally realized he didn't fire a disposable manager. He fired the person holding the company's spine together. By the end of that week, 2 former Dalton clients contacted me directly, one to explore a transition, the other to ask if we were hiring. I didn't gloat. I didn't post anything. I worked, but revenge, when it comes quietly, hits harder. Still, I hadn't answered the question in my own mind. Was this about building something for myself, or about taking him down? I thought I could separate the two. I was wrong. The truth crystallized when I received an internal message from someone unexpected. It was anonymous at first, just a forwarded document. No subject line, no signature. It was an internal Dalton report, dated just a few weeks before my firing. It showed that Gordon had authorized changes to the McKinnon contract that I had explicitly advised against, before the negotiations were officially closed. Worse, he'd reported to the board that I had agreed to them. There was one problem. The attached email had my name, but the timestamp was from a day I was out of office, verifiably on a call with Novan Ridge in London. It was fabricated. I traced the email through metadata with the help of my IT advisor. It wasn't just a forged date. It was a full falsification of consent. He hadn't just fired me. He'd rewritten history. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat with the file open, scrolling through every line, every attached comment. My hands trembled, but not with fear, with control. Cold, measured control. If I had exposed him before, it would have looked petty. Now, I had proof of deliberate misconduct. Real, traceable, corporate fraud. He had tried to bury me under paperwork. And now, I was holding the shovel. It took exactly 9 days from the moment Stonebridge Dynamics was officially registered for the request to come. It wasn't from Gordon. It was from the CEO's executive assistant, a carefully worded email inviting me to a private discussion regarding transitional consulting support on legacy accounts. The tone was formal, but not cold. Polite, but uncertain. It read like a message drafted by committee. Too careful, too late. I let it sit for 24 hours. Then I replied with a single sentence. I'm open to a short-term discussion under very clear conditions. Within hours, a follow-up came. This time, more direct. They wanted me to return in a limited consulting capacity on McKinnon and 2 other contracts in jeopardy. They would compensate me as an independent, offer full access to the contract archives, and route all communication through the CEO's office. The internal tone had shifted. Gordon was clearly on thinner ice than they let on, but I saw it for what it really was. A controlled panic. They didn't trust Gordon to fix what he broke, but they couldn't afford to admit that publicly. And they didn't know I had the file. I agreed to a 1-week engagement, on paper, just long enough to reassess continuity. I knew I wouldn't need more than that. When I walked back into Dalton Technologies, the air was different. People greeted me with the kind of uncertain politeness reserved for someone you once watched get hit by a train and now see walking toward you unharmed. Gordon wasn't in the office when I arrived. Clive met me in the elevator. He's rattled, he said under his breath. No one's saying it, but it's obvious. Has he seen the leak? Worse, Clive said. The board's launching an internal review, not public, yet. Good. I spent my first day reviewing the McKinnon revisions, this time as an outsider. I asked for Gordon's meeting notes, email logs, everything that passed through compliance. The staff complied without hesitation. His authority was cracked. People no longer feared him. They feared what was coming. Late that evening, I finally crossed paths with him in the hallway. He didn't speak, didn't stop, just brushed past me with a glance of pure venom. But I stopped walking. Gordon, I said calmly. He froze, turned slowly. I hope you know I'm here for the right reasons, I continued, to help clean up what got messy. He smiled tightly. Good. Let's not make this personal. Oh, I won't, I said. I'm very professional these days. I could see it in his eyes. He was trying to measure what I knew, but I gave him nothing. That was the weapon. Silence. He couldn't fight what he couldn't see. 2 days later, I requested a private meeting with the CEO. I didn't bring files. I didn't bring accusations. I brought a question. What kind of company do you want this to be in 5 years? He looked at me, long and carefully. One with fewer blind spots, he said finally. I nodded. Then you need to see this. And I handed him a single printed page, the metadata audit from the falsified email, just enough to show him the truth, without making it public. He said nothing at first. He just stared at it. Then, "Is this verified?" I nodded. More than once. "Why haven't you taken this to court?" "Because I wanted to give you a chance," I said. "A chance to correct the mistake before I correct the record." He exhaled slowly. "What do you want?" I smiled. "Nothing you can give me anymore. I just wanted you to know." The next morning, Gordon wasn't at work. His assistant said he was on leave. By noon, 2 members of the legal department were seen removing folders from his office. By evening, I had quietly left the building with a signed agreement releasing me from all former restrictions and non-disclosures. They wanted no trouble. They wouldn't get any, because I had everything I needed. And now, I had something more. Control. The days following Gordon's leave were eerily quiet. People still spoke in hushed voices, but the energy in the office had shifted. There was no mourning, no outrage, just relief, disguised as professionalism. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. But word reached me that Dalton's internal counsel had reviewed the forged email and confirmed everything. Gordon's departure was already being rewritten as a voluntary resignation, but everyone knew better. His name was being slowly scrubbed from upcoming projects, and the board was moving fast to protect what was left of their reputation. I was done. Before I left, I met once more with the CEO, not in a boardroom, but in a quiet corner office that still smelled of old paper and new polish. He offered me a formal apology, not for the company's failure, for his silence. "I trusted the wrong person," he said, carefully avoiding Gordon's name. "You trusted a man who spoke louder than the results," I replied. "We've all done it." He asked if I'd consider staying longer, helping rebuild. I declined. "I'm not angry," I told him, "but I'm done fixing things that should have never broken." I walked out of Dalton for the last time with nothing in my hands and everything ahead of me. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt whole. I had faced the man who tried to erase me, outlasted his manipulation, and exposed him not by shouting, but by showing up, calm and certain when it counted most. Back at Stonebridge Dynamics, the pieces were already moving. In my absence, my tiny team had finalized a new onboarding process, signed our first 2 independent contracts, and begun work on a brand identity package. Isolde from Novenridge sent a note. "Momentum suits you. Keep going." The industry press followed quietly. A few blogs speculated on Gordon's fall, hinting at misaligned priorities and leadership changes amid internal scrutiny. My name came up, never as a whistleblower, but as a former Dalton executive now leading her own firm abroad. That was enough. Let the world draw its own conclusions. Meanwhile, I sat at my desk, surrounded by whiteboards filled with notes and proposals and client names I never thought I'd work with. I wasn't fighting for a title anymore. I wasn't trying to be seen. I was building something that would last beyond me. Clive called once more that week, not for gossip, just to check in. "I'm glad you're out," he said. It was like watching someone get slowly poisoned over the years. "I stayed too long," I admitted. "No, you stayed until you changed the room just by leaving it." He paused, then added, "They asked me if I'd take his job." I smiled. "And?" "I said I'd think about it, but only if the place keeps changing." "Then make it change," I said, "for the next version of me who walks through the door." After we hung up, I looked out the window. The sky was flat and pale, but not gloomy, just full of space. I opened my laptop and began drafting the next client proposal, not as an employee, not as a savior, but as a founder. The past was finally where it belonged, and I was no longer someone else's story. I was writing my own 6 months past. The world didn't stop when Gordon Trevitt was dismissed, but behind closed doors, people remembered. His name became a cautionary tale in upper management circles, about ego, control, and what happens when you gamble with truth in a world that's growing tired of silence. Officially, Dalton Technologies never issued a public statement about his departure, but those who mattered knew. Their largest client quietly ended their partnership. 2 board members stepped down. The company launched a restructuring initiative that signaled a turning tide. Clive, promoted into a newly created role focused on ethical strategy, became a quiet reformer from within. We spoke now and then, more like peers than old colleagues. He was tired, but steady. As for Gordon? Last I heard, he'd relocated to a firm abroad. Something smaller, less visible. Someone sent me a screenshot of a company website with his face under a vague title. Strategic consultant. No authority, no power, just a name on a page, forgotten by most. I didn't think about him much anymore. Stonebridge Dynamics had grown from a name on a business card to a functioning, respected consultancy. Our first fiscal quarter closed with 3 secured long-term partnerships and a 4th in negotiation. Our focus was clear: transparent growth strategies for supply chains that had been hollowed out by greed and shortcuts. We weren't flashy, but we were consistent. And consistency, I had learned, was what lasted. My team had expanded to 6, all of them people I'd met or mentored over the years, quiet talents overlooked by louder voices. We worked long hours, but no one stayed late to be seen. They stayed because they believed in the work. One morning, I stood by the window of our modest Hamburg office and reread a headline on my phone. Stonebridge Dynamics expands into UK market founder calls. It a return home on my terms. A journalist had reached out after a quiet industry event. I hadn't sought publicity, but I hadn't avoided it either. When she asked if I had anything to say to the people who doubted me, I told her the truth. I don't have time to look back. I'm building forward. She quoted it at the end of the article. Clean, direct, no bitterness. Later that afternoon, I received a package at the office. No name on the sender. Inside was a sealed envelope and a note. For when you're ready to tell your full story. It was a publishing offer, a business imprint. They wanted my version of what had happened at Dalton. I smiled and slid the letter into a drawer. Maybe one day, but not now. Right now, I had a call with a regional transport group looking to move away from legacy providers. They'd heard about our approach from a client we helped last quarter. Word was spreading. Not fast, but steady. That was enough. As I sat down and opened my laptop, the world outside shifted into evening. The sky darkened, but inside there was clarity. I had no corner office, no gold nameplate, just a team that trusted me, a voice that had found its way back, and a future that wasn't promised, but earned. No one fired me from this life, because this time I built it myself.